When we look back at our story, Prestonwood has played such an important role in the life of our family and in leading us to the foster and adoption ministry. And one of the ways that God really prepared Marcus and I, really knit our hearts together on this issue, was being involved in a Bible fellowship group. During that Bible fellowship group, God really began to speak to both of our hearts that it wasn't just enough to read the Bible, to learn the statutes of God, but we needed to go out and get busy about the work of the Lord. A little over 2 years ago, I was teaching in the Bible fellowship ministry on Saturday nights, and that year, a student walked into my classroom who had been placed with a family in foster care. He was placed separately from his brother and sister because at that point he was really struggling with leukemia and his white blood cell count was very low. And so I just immediately came home and I said, this is just so unusual that there's this child that's been placed in my classroom, and he's got these brothers and sisters. And so we really began thinking and praying about it. But it looked like in the fall of that year that they were going to be adopted by another family. In a very quick turn of events, we ended up with the 3 children in our home and adopted by November. And that really would not have been possible except for the ministry here at Prestonwood. I think just preparing our hearts, introducing us to these children, and supporting us in the way that they do with so many wonderful friends and family that minister in the same way. One of the questions we had to ask ourselves is, what would our family look like if God was in charge? And I challenge you to ask your family the same question. What would your family look like if God was in charge?
And if I could just talk for a minute to you men, I would encourage you to have that conversation with your wife, because I'm confident that adding new children to your home is not a decision that she has taken lightly. The second thing I would tell you is, I know very clearly I have 4 new members of my family. They need Christian men to be their dads.
People come to me and they ask me, I'd like to do this, but my husband's not ready. I always tell them to wait, because I do believe that this needs to be something that is Spirit-led, that is the head of the household. A lot of times it can seem very overwhelming when you are thinking about taking in a child from difficult places who suffered trauma and abuse. But what you'll learn very quickly is that these are children, and they're children in need. And God has equipped us as parents to deal with all of those things through His Spirit and the power of His Word.
We know so many families, and many at this church, who are wonderful foster and adoptive parents. And the reality is, we need lots of families to be taking this ministry seriously and getting involved.
One of the things that people want to talk to me about a lot is when they look and they say, okay, you've got 6 children. What are you expecting for the future? What does success look like here? And one of the ways that I really have had to battle with that, because that's every mom's fear. We want our children to grow up, but really when we boiled it down, what we mostly want is that they're following hard after Jesus. And so success is not really our main concern. It's about obedience, and we can leave success up to God in the way that He wants that for each of our individual children. And that might look different for different ones at different times. And I need to come to peace with that. And that's something that God works in the life of my heart as well, that I can trust Him with my children. I can trust Him with the 2 that we were gifted with biologically, and I can trust Him with the 4 that He's brought to us. He knew who they were, He chose them for us, and He has equipped and prepared us to be their parents.
And from that baseline, if all of our children know Jesus, we know that we're going to have 6 different stories for all of these kids. It's not a checklist of success.
It's an adventure.